Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more Karen stories. In this video, a ridiculous Karen customer demands I should be fired and pulls out my prosthetic. However, I am actually the store owner. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. And the first one starts like this. I used to work in a factory with less than ideal conditions, but at the time it was the only place I could get work and I needed money. After an incident with an electric saw safety being broken, I was down one hand. I will spare everybody the gory details of that day, but I did get a nice payout for their lack of safety standards. I used that as seed money to start a small store and did not expect it to become as successful as it did. It's not crazy like a Walmart, but I consider it a huge success for me. My store for the most part sells camping and other outdoor activity needs. Since I live in an area not far from woods and mountains, we get a lot of people coming in needing things like that. Tents, fishing rods, climbing gear, etc. One thing we don't sell that goes with all of that is guns, because the licensing is just too much of a mess and I worry about Karens. Over the years, I felt like I got good at dealing with problem customers without things getting crazy enough to need a story like this. I was not expecting this Karen, who seemed like she woke up on the wrong side of the bed, fell out of it, forgot to take her medicine and spilled all her coffee. So she came in basically wanting to start a fight and decided to pick it with one of my younger looking employees, which for a Karen seems to be the prime hunting target. I don't know exactly what they are talking about, but I do hear Karen mention that my husband is the owner. I am married and that woman is clearly not my wife, nor does she look like her at all. In fact, a lot of staff know my wife as she comes by to help out during the really busy season. This day though, she was not there. Anyway, I heard that and walked over ready to give her a taste of her scam failing. I was working on the floor that day, which was lucky for that associate, but unlucky for me. Excuse me ma'am, can I help you? Karen, yeah, this kid doesn't understand anything. I'm trying to get some fishing equipment. I notice she does indeed have a cart with a bunch of fishing items in it. Is there a problem with them scanning? Karen, I'm not supposed to pay. I'm the owner's wife, which means I basically already own these items. Okay, listen, I know what you're trying to pull here, but you're not the owner's wife. I am the owner and I would know if I married you. So you can either pay for your things or just leave. Karen, how dare you accuse me of lying? Lying is a sin and I never say anything that is not the truth. You are not the real owner. Real owners don't come into their stores. They are far too busy running things. I don't know what else to tell you aside from that I'm the owner. Do you want to buy these things or leave? Karen, you better let me leave with these things or I will get you fired so quickly it will make your head spin. My husband is powerful and won't accept his employees lying about being the owner. She tries to push the car towards the door, but I hold out a hand trying to stop her without actually touching her. I told her to leave the cart here, but to leave the store right now, as I don't allow shoplifters. She is still screaming loudly that her husband is the owner and making such a scene that everyone shopping is just staring at us. I give her one more warning that I'm going to have security called if she doesn't walk out without the items. She grabs my hand that I've held up and ripped it right off. It was my prosthetic hand that, unless people know me or are paying close attention, don't always realize that it is not real. My guess is she wanted to pull me down and then run out of the door with the stuff. Instead, my hand went flying and everything got eerily quiet for a few seconds. I think the shock of what most people assume to be a real hand flying off a body will do that. I was really embarrassed as now my stump was exposed and I just felt very uncomfortable. I was also in pain as ripping it off is gonna hurt me and it felt like she must have twisted it or something too. If I had a wrist it would for sure have been sprained at least. Instead my stump was hurting and to make matters worse, once I ran to get my hand, it seemed damaged as well. My staff called the police for me and they got there before Karen had the brains to try and run away. They went to get statements and of course Karen started making up a story about her husband being the store owner and that I supposedly tried to attack her with my prosthetic hand like it was some kind of weapon. I explained to the police that I was the owner and what actually happened, along with giving them a copy of the security footage which Karen was now only realizing existed. I also ended up sending them a copy to my insurance company for the store to be on the safe side of things. And even my medical insurance got a copy so I could prove the damage was from somebody else so I could get coverage for a replacement hand. The damage on this was near where it went on the stump, so it didn't fit right anymore. But of course, I pressed charges against Karen for assault, and I am as shocked as everybody else to say that once she was arrested, she actually went with the police calmly. Karen realized that fighting the police is a bad idea, and I had to share that with all of you. The last thing she did say really hurt my soul though, and it sticks with me even today. Who would want to buy things from a gimp like you? I know she's just a jerk, but damn, that does not stop the comment from hurting. I'm glad that my staff worked so well at calling the police and making sure everybody was safe in the end of it. No customers were harmed was the thing that made me feel a little better at the end of the day. Her criminal charges were for aggravated assault against a disabled individual, this being a lot worse than if she assaulted somebody that was not disabled, and her excuse of not knowing was not gonna cut it for the courts. A jury hears a disabled person got assaulted and they tend to not be very friendly. All in all, she was going to prison for a few years due to it all. On the civil side of things, she was forced to pay for the damage that she caused. The store was fine, but even with insurance I had a big medical bill for getting the hand replaced. Plus the fact that my stump was sore and bruised for a while, on top of all of that a little extra money for pain and suffering, which I guess she was not happy about having to pay at all. I frequent here enough to know about people coming back even years later for some kind of revenge. I made sure to get a restraining order against Karen so that she could not come anywhere near me anymore. I of course also banned her from the store so she cannot pull anything there in the future if she comes back. She really should have just given up once her scam was caught and nothing bad would have happened to her. At least now she cannot go around trying to steal from other stores with the same story of being the owner's wife. And yeah guys, just to quickly chime in, I want to remind you, as mentioned in a previous video, my cat Dexter is currently participating in a cat beauty contest, and I would very much appreciate it if you could go to the Facebook link either on my community page or linked in the comments and like the picture of Dexter. He is currently in the top 2 and he has a good chance of winning. Thank you so much in advance. This is a small bit of maliciousness that happened years ago, but to this day it is still one of my favorite stories to tell. So there needs to be a bit of context to this one for you to understand the beauty of what happened. So I was in a traditional kung fu school for 9 years. My Sifu teacher was one of the most honest and respectable men I've ever known. In this school there was a certain etiquette you had to follow out of both respect for the art and your fellow students. We had things like bowing before entering doorways, always facing north to take off our sash, stuff like that. Keep in mind though that we were not just teaching students here, we fostered a family and treated one another as if we were all brothers as sisters. One of the rules was that men wore their sashes on the right while women wore their sashes on the left. I'm a trans male and my Sifu was one of the very few people who knew this, and also I present very androgynous. My Sifu and I talked about it when I came out to him because I was concerned about how it would affect the etiquette of the school, and we both agreed that neither of us cared how I wore my sash, so I just kept it on the left out of habit. Very friendly conversation. At my school we did a traditional performance every year for Chinese New Year called a lion head dance. If you look it up online, it's both intriguing and hilarious to watch because it's essentially two people underneath a large fluffy papier-mâché lion. We would do this for restaurants, schools or event centers, and we even got to perform for the Chinese consulate at one time. Basically, one person is in the head of the lion while the other one operates the tail, and we work together to cleanse the space to ensure a year of good fortune for the establishment and scare away evil spirits. Everyone always loved these events, and it was some of the funniest performances I'd ever done. There's drums, dancing, firecrackers, the whole ordeal. I was almost always in a lion with my Sifu because we made a surprisingly good team. One year we went to this little Chinese restaurant who hired us to do our normal thing. We get there, we set up, lay out the equipment and begin stretching before the performance. This performance was one lion with me in the tail and my Sifu in the head. As we are talking and getting ready, suddenly the owner of the establishment walks over to my Sifu and I with the most disappointed look on his face. My Sifu asks if everything is alright, and this guy just started in on my Sifu through gritted teeth. He originally asked why I was standing there, and my Sifu, while confused, said that I was his tail for tonight. The owner said that this was highly disrespectful because a woman should not be in the performance and should never be in the lion. My Sifu, with a now deadpan look on his face, chuckled and basically said, we don't live in the days of Chinese dynasties anymore, sir. This is my student, I'm their teacher, and they are more than welcome to perform and represent my school. The owner kept on going off about how it's disrespectful to the culture and how I should not even be in the show because I was a female. My Sifu looked back at me, looked at the owner, got a cheeky little grin on his face and said, "No problem." So he turned to me, grabbed my sash, twisted it to my right side, bowed and addressed me as Didi, meaning younger brother, before turning back to the owner. He had the most shocked and appalled look on his face, and it took me everything I had not to just bust up laughing. The owner huffed, told us to just do the show, and then stormed off. And just as a little cherry on the top of this interaction, I went to get into the tail and my Sifu stopped me, motioning for me to get into the head of the lion. So I got to lead the show that night, and the owner just had to sit back and deal with the fact that he did not get his way by throwing a sexist fit. The year after, we got hired by the same restaurant, and my Sifu, instead of rejecting it, made absolutely sure that the performance that night was all female students and the owner did not say a word. And the next one is another malicious compliance story. And by the way guys, let me know in the comments which subreddit is your favorite, aside from r/justknowHOA of course. Do you prefer the revenge stories or the malicious compliance stories? I'm very curious about what you have to say. So, the superintendent of my old school was comically rigid in his views and seemed to have his mindset stuck in the 1960s. He told us without a hint of irony that the only way students would respect us is if we were dressed professionally. Not even business casual was okay for him. Faculty wearing sneakers or blue jeans was a legitimate cause for termination under our contract. The male staff dress code demanded that we wear a long-sleeve button-up shirt with a tie, dress pants with a belt, and dress shoes or boots every day. There was, however, a note in our contract stating that the dress code could be reasonably relaxed if not possible due to a medical condition. No details were provided beyond that though. Well, my wife and I moved apartments one weekend and my feet hurt, so I made the executive decision that that was a medical condition and wore my sneakers to school on Monday. I figured I could just lay low and keep my feet hidden from any pesky administrators, and I knew that my students would not care. My students in fact thought it was awesome that part of my appearance was that of a real person. Wouldn't you know it, that was the day the superintendent and building administrators were coming around room by room to give the school board members a building tour. So of course I had to get up and greet them. Nobody said anything to me, but I did receive a nasty email from the assistant principal with CC to the principal and superintendent reminding me of the expectations set forth in the teacher dress code. No note in my file or anything, just a warning. Fair enough I suppose, but it pissed me off that they didn't even ask why I decided to wear sneakers and just sent me a warning with no chance to defend myself. So then, cue the malicious compliance. If you noticed from my post title, the dress code just said dress shoes and boots, and well, are you familiar with demonia boots? I went ahead and bought the most over-the-top bombastic pair of boots on their website. I'm talking black leather with 3-in platforms, chain studs, zippers and straps galore. They came about halfway up my shins and of course I tucked my pants into them. My students thought they were amazing and there are pictures of my feet all over various social media sites. A few of my coworkers took it upon themselves to give me a stern warning and some others gave me a high five. After 4 days of wearing these boots with no incident, the principal ended up behind me in the hallway. Rather quickly he asked, "What the hell are those?" So I told him they were boots to ensure that I'm in compliance with the dress code and kept walking. That afternoon I received an email from him stating that I was intentionally being unprofessional and this would be documented in my record and further dress code offenses could lead to disciplinary action or even suspension. I immediately got in touch with my union, who quickly dealt with that in my favor since they were indeed boots. I also explained to the union that I only did this because of the nasty email I received for wearing sneakers with my sore feet. The union rep immediately smirked and told me that she was unfamiliar with that rule and told me to go ahead and wear whatever footwear I wanted and that if anybody had a problem, I could just claim that I had sore feet. Long story short though, I ended up wearing my sneakers every single day for the entire rest of the school year and never had another problem. My favorite part of this is that I inspired a few other rebels, and by the time I left at school, there were a solid 10 of us that were just routinely wearing sneakers or other non-dress compliant footwear in blatant disregard of the dress code every single day. Good times. Definitely a legacy that I left behind in that school. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. A little bit of background. The backyard of this house is L-shaped because there was a shop in the backyard that took up part of what normally would be a lawn. There was a fence that ran from the left corner of the house straight back to where the backyard went up a hill, but it did not make a right turn at all, and it did not come across the other side of the lawn to close up the backyard. We would park our vehicles behind the house on a cement pad, and another thing to note is my wife is disabled and cannot drive our vehicles. This is important for incident number 1. Incident 1, your cars are in my way. So, I am at work, I have my car with me, but our wheelchair accessible van is parked in our parking area behind the house near the back lawn. My wife calls me on this day really upset. The next door neighbor has banged on our back door after I told him to stop going in our backyard, see the linked story, and when my wife talked to him through the window with him, he demanded that we move our van because he needed to get his tractor out of his backyard. Of course, my wife is upset about how rude the neighbor is. In addition, I have no clue at all what he is talking about. Why would he need us to move our van in order for him to get his tractor out? She had told him that she could not drive the van, and after going back and forth with the neighbor, she finally just closed the window and ignored him and went away. So when I got home from work, I went over to the neighbor's house to talk to him and find out what is going on. What I found out was that he parks his tractor up the hill that is at the end of both of our yards, and because of the angle of the hill and it getting higher on his property, he has always just driven his tractor down the hill onto the now my side of the backyard and out over the lawn, through the car pad and down my driveway, and then over to his house to use it. Of course, since we have moved in and park our cars on the car pad, they are in the way. Trying to be a friendly neighbor, I told him that I would be more than happy to move my vehicles out of the way if he tells me ahead of time that he will need to move his tractor. I tell him again that I don't want him in my backyard banging on my back door at all, come to the front door like a normal person. I also tell him that my wife is disabled and that he cannot just bang on the door during the day expecting her to move the van. She cannot drive the van, so won't be able to move it as well. He then requested that I give him a key to the van, as he felt he should be able to take out his tractor anytime he needs to use it. And also, having the van parked there is just not going to work for him. I don't remember what I told him, but I do remember being dumbstruck for a couple seconds at this completely absurd request. I don't even know why he thought I was going to give my neighbor, who I had not even known for very long and already had a run-in with, a key to my vehicle. Anyway, I told him absolutely not. If he needs to get his tractor in or out, he is to call me, and I of course gave him my number ahead of time and arranged for it. Other than that, he was SOL. He was not happy about the situation and grumbled and cussed at me for a few minutes, stuff about how he has always done it that way before I moved in and does not understand why I won't just park my car somewhere else. And also that he should be able to pull his tractor in and out without having to arrange with me because it is his tractor and not mine. I reminded him that yes, the tractor is his, but the backyard, car pad and driveway are all mine. So if he wanted to ever get his tractor in and out again through my backyard, he needs to follow my rules or find a different path. Finally, after a bunch of more grumbling, he finally asked if I could move the van so he could get it out right now. I told him I would be happy to, but to remember to call me when he needs to bring it back in. He told me he would call me, but that he would also have it out for several days as he had a bunch of yard work to do. To my surprise, he actually started calling me when he needed to move his tractor. Except for one time where we had a big storm and a tree came down onto his property and he needed the tractor to help him remove it, which I completely understood, and since I was home that day, I said no problem. Things were actually pretty good at this point with the neighbor until I decided to finish fencing in the backyard, but that is another story for another day. And the next one is part 2 of the story. It starts like this. Next summer, after part 1 happened, I wanted to enclose my backyard completely. We had 2 dogs at this point and wanted to be able to just let them be dogs outside in the nice weather and not have to be supervised all the time, plus we wanted to put in a doggy door to let them in and out on their own. My project would entail putting in a fence from the end of the long side of the L across the back of my yard to the shop that was there. Then putting another segment of fence where the short part of the L was that would run from the main house to the shop. The existing fence I would be starting from on the long side of the L was not actually on the property line. It went from the corner of the house and straight back. The property line was about 4-ish feet beyond the fence. This is important. So one day I am in my backyard and I know this project is coming up and I see my grouchy neighbor. I had been meaning to talk to him about me fencing my backyard and that he would need to find another way to get his tractor down. I know I could have just said F you to the situation based on my previous run-ins with him, but I am always the type of person who at least tries to get along with his neighbors. So I go over to my fence line and call for my neighbor. He comes walking over closer to me, but I have my Great Dane with me and he does not like dogs much, so he stays a bit away from me and the fence. The following conversation happens. Please note it's been a few years since this took place, so this is not word for word, just the gist of the conversation. Me? So I wanted to let you know that I'll be building 2 more segments to my fence enclosing the backyard, so you will need to find a different way of getting your tractor up and down of the hill. Neighbor: why are you doing that? Me: I want to enclose it so that the dogs can play out here and I don't have to worry about them. Neighbor: I'm not sure why it's my problem that you decided to have dogs. You cannot put up a fence. I need to drive through your backyard. Me: well, it is not your backyard and I've already gotten it cleared with my landlord. So I'm building the fence. I'm just letting you know I'm doing it. I'm not asking for your permission. Neighbor: if you build a fence that blocks me, I'm just going to rip it out. You do that and I will have you arrested for trespassing and destruction of property, I said. Neighbor: you cannot build a fence. I need to be able to go down into your backyard to get my tractor down. You have to let me keep doing that. Me: I don't, and I'm not going to. I have now informed you of the fence coming. The fence guys will be here in a few days, so you better get your tractor out now before I build it. Neighbor: well, I'm not moving my tractor today, and if you build your fence, I'm just going to run it over. Me: then I will call the cops. I then walk away. He yells some cuss words at me as I am walking away and keeps yelling that he has the right to use my backyard. I shake my head and go into my house. The next week the fence guys I had hired come out and dig the holes, put the uprights up and fill the holes with cement. It takes a couple days for the cement to dry, so I figured my neighbor would get the hint and move his tractor, but he doesn't. So a couple days later the fence guys come and stretch the chain link fence on the uprights and do whatever else they do to finish the work, install a new gate by my cars, and everything is done. That following weekend I am out in my backyard and my dogs are enjoying running around and I am stress-free because I don't have to keep a constant eye on them. I hear a banging on the fence and turn to see my neighbor. Of course the dogs go running at him and he backs off. Neighbor: I need to get my tractor down today, so what are we going to do? Me: I'm not going to do anything. I warned you, you did nothing. Now you have to find another way to get it down. Neighbor: no, you're required by law to let me go through your backyard. You are breaking the law by installing a fence. Me: I don't think so, but you are welcome to call the cops and explain that to them. Let me know what they say, okay? Neighbor: I know what I will do. I will just tear down this fence here, pointing at the fence along the long side of the L. Since it is on the property line, I can do that. Me: no, you cannot. You and I can both see that the fence runs from the corner of the house. The property line is actually about where you are standing. Neighbor: no, it is not. This is the property line. It's where the fence is. Me: okay, dude, but if you touch that fence, I will call the cops on you just as a warning. After that, I went into the house. He never touched my fence. I saw him get his tractor down by driving over his flower beds, which made me smile. A month or 2 later, I did see a survey crew out, so I went and talked to them. Apparently, the neighbor had called the county and tried to complain about the fence and trying to find out if he could take it down. So they said they would send a survey crew out to mark the property line. Well, they did, and guess what? The property line was right about where I said it was. When the neighbor saw the orange painted markings that clearly showed that the fence was on my property, he just stopped talking to me for a while. Eventually, he moved out. However, I did have a bit of an issue with the new neighbor. He kept complaining that the fence was not high enough to keep a Great Dane from jumping over it, and his wife was afraid of dogs. He asked if he could pay to raise it up. I told him that I would prefer not, as it would not match the rest of my fence. He tried to say it was on the property line and he could do it without my permission, at which point I told him that those orange lines were the property line, and if he wanted to, he could put up a brand new fence right there and it would not bother me. However, he never did. The new neighbor ended up turning it into a rental, so I never had to deal with it again. And the next one is another neighbor story from the same user, so it is essentially another update to the saga. I have posted here before about a previous house I lived at. About 7 months ago I moved into a new, for me, home that is a corner house. I met all my neighbors and all seemed fine, but over time I have come to learn that the older lady that lives next door seems to fit the bill for entitled. So I thought I would share one of the experiences I've had with her for the past few months. If I get a good response, I will share others. My wife is in a wheelchair and as such we have a wheelchair accessible van. It is one of the big full-sized vans with an extended top. I park it in our driveway so that when it is rainy, which it is here a lot, I can lower down the ramp and my wife can just drive her wheelchair through the garage into the van, easy peasy. But shortly after I moved in, I had this conversation with my neighbor, of course not word for word, but pretty close. Neighbor comes walking over when I am out in my garage. She says hi and then starts in on this. Neighbor, I noticed you parked this big van, motioning to it, in your driveway. Me, yes. Neighbor, well, I was hoping maybe you can park it somewhere else. Me, why would I want to do that? Neighbor, well, I have a sitting area in my house and I like to watch the neighborhood throughout the day, and your van is blocking my view of the corner here. Me, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do that. My wife needs to be able to get in the van with her wheelchair. Neighbor, well, can't you park in the street? Me, if I parked it in the street and I pointed to the street in front of my house, my wife would have to go out in the rain in her wheelchair to load, which is not something I want her to do. Neighbor, no, I was thinking you could park it in front of the house next to mine. And she pointed to the house 2 doors down, or maybe on the side of your house, so it's not blocking the corner. Before anybody gets on me about this not being true, this is 100% true. She even pointed, she literally suggested that instead of parking the van in my own driveway, to rather park it in front of her neighbor's house 2 doors down from me. Me, I'm not going to do that. My wife needs easy access to the van. Neighbor, well, it's just that I really want to be able to see what's going on in the neighborhood. Me, I'm sorry, but it is my driveway and my van and I have to think of my family first. Neighbor, well, you know, the people who lived here before you did not have a big van that blocked my view. I kind of just looked at her at this point as I was kind of stunned that she was using the people who have moved out as some type of leverage to try to get me to move the van. Me, well, I'm not going to move it anywhere else. At this point I don't remember what she said, but some grouchy old lady justification for what she wanted, and then she turned around and walked away. I actually had been in contact with the people who were in the house before me, so I texted them and asked them about the neighbor. They told me that the neighbor was always on them about this, or that when they lived in the house. Sometimes they would do what she asked to get her to stop nagging them, and sometimes not. Me, I usually find myself in the not category. And the next one is another update about the neighbor. I have posted about my neighbor before, but this one shocked me. So today, in the middle of the day, I've been working at home, my old lady neighbor came over and knocked on the door. So I opened it up and talked to her briefly. She was complaining that my hedge has not been trimmed in a while and she really wants it trimmed. This is the hedge on my property that she somehow thinks she has the right to tell me she wants it her way. After getting past that, this exchange took place, just me trying to be friendly. Me, so how are you doing? You staying healthy? I saw that you were walking your dogs yesterday. Her, oh yes, I've been doing okay. I try to walk my dogs every day to keep moving. At my age, if you stop moving, it is hard to get started again. Me, yes, it's very good to keep moving. Her, I did however have to go to the hospital this week. Me, oh, are you okay? Her? Yes. I went because I've been having this cough and I don't know why. And when I went in, they decided because of my symptoms that they are testing me for the virus. Me? Okay then, I hope it comes back negative. Then I closed the door. Who the hell goes next door to complain about a hatch being overgrown that is not even yours if you've just been tested because you have the symptoms of the virus? What the hell? And the next one is another story in the saga. I have posted about her before, complaints about my hatch blocking her view and that my van is ugly, etc. But here is a new one. On 25th June I had surgery that did not go as planned. Since then I have spent 25 days in the hospital, have been taken to the hospital 3 times by an ambulance and have had a whole herd of nurses come to the house to give me care. I'm doing better now, I expect my neighbors to be curious. But she is entitled and annoying. Here is an exchange I overheard between her and one of my nurses. Annoying neighbor: "Hi, are you a nurse?" Nurse: "Yeah." AN: "Why are you here?" Nurse: "Just providing care. I cannot tell you more than that without their permission." AN: "Well, can you tell me if that's the man or the woman getting care?" Nurse: "No, I cannot tell you that. But I need to know. Are you family?" "No, I live next door." "Then I cannot tell you." "You should tell me. If they have something that I can get, you legally have to tell me." "No, I don't. Medical records are private. If you want to know, ask them yourself." AN: "Well, I asked one of the other nurses that came over and she said she would tell me." Nurse: "I doubt that, otherwise you would know." "She just ran out of time to tell me, so you should just tell me." "I'm not telling you." "Well, the other neighbor across the street knows what's going on, so one of the nurses had to tell him, but he won't share with me, so you should just tell me." I told the other neighbor because they are not a pain in my butt and I like to have become friends with them. Nurse: "I'm sorry, I cannot and won't tell you. I need to go inside now." AN: "You need to move your car then. You cannot park where you are." Nurse: "I'm parked on the street where other cars are parked. Why can't I park there?" AN: "Well, someone else who lives in this neighborhood might need to park there." Nobody ever parks there except people visiting me, by the way. Nurse: "Okay, well, I'm not moving my car and I need to go inside." AN: "Wait, do they have the virus? I don't want to get the virus." Nurse: "I cannot tell you that. Bye." The annoying neighbor then stood on the sidewalk watching my door for about 10 minutes huffing until she finally left. And the next one is another update in the saga. I have posted about my next door neighbor before, about her calling the cops on my car in my own driveway. Her complaining about the hatch and her coming to my door to talk to me with virus symptoms. But I now have a new one. This one is just from today. So I am sitting in my office, which has a window that looks out into the front yard. I have one of my vehicles parked in the street in front of my house and 2 in the driveway. I happen to glance outside and see a sheriff car pull up in front of my car. I thought it's odd, but figured maybe something is going on in the neighborhood. So I keep an eye on what is going on, and I then see the officer get out of the car and walk to my car and start looking at it. I figured I should go outside and talk to them. I put on my mask and hobble outside, still recovering from surgery. The interaction goes something along the lines of this. Me: "Good afternoon, officer. Can I help you with anything?" Officer: "Good afternoon. We got a report that this car might be abandoned. Is this yours?" Me: "Yes, and it is not abandoned." Officer: "The report I have is that the car has been sitting here for weeks without moving. If the car is not operational, it has to be moved off the street." Me: "I actually drove it yesterday. Was gone for about an hour. I also drove it on Friday when I went to the pharmacy." Officer: "Do you happen to have any proof that you drove it?" Me: "Of course." I go to my car and get out a piece of paper and show him. As it happens to be, the reason I had it out for an hour yesterday was to go get it smog checked, called DEQ in Oregon. When you pass, they give you a receipt that shows you passed DEQ, and it has all the information on it about the test, including the date and the amount you paid. So the officer just looks at it and then hands the paper back to me. Officer: "Thank you. Clearly, if you were at DEQ yesterday and passed the test, the vehicle is not abandoned." Me: "Nope. My guess is that my annoying neighbor called you guys. She's always doing stupid stuff like this because she feels the neighborhood is under her domain and control." Officer: "I cannot provide that information." Me: "I know. Have a good afternoon. Happy Thanksgiving." Officer: "Happy Thanksgiving to you too." So the officer goes to his car and I looked at my neighbor's house and I see her at the window. I smile and wave at her her, she gives me a dirty look and then goes away from the window. I wish her sons would put her into a smaller home or a nursing home or retirement home or something. She has way too much time on her hands being in that huge house all day by herself. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much and I will see you again tomorrow.